You can start.
Thanks, Bibhishan. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to today's Biochar Series session from Shekru TV. This is the 18th session in this Shekru TV Biochar Series. Over the past few sessions, we've been exploring how biochar is reshaping the way we think about soil health, carbon removal, and sustainable agriculture. And we are hoping today's conversation promises to take that exploration even further into what a carbon project is and what happens behind, what is a carbon credit, and a lot of interesting things which not many project developers have discussed even in this platform. As a quick introduction, Shekru TV is an agricultural extension initiative of Shekru Foundation. Shekru TV does online deep dive sessions via Zoom, along with YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn Live. No registration, free usually sessions in Marathi, and now starting in Hindi and English languages. Shekru TV does this with various stakeholders on relevant topics in agriculture. And 2.0 Farms has been partnering with Shekru TV to bring forward a lot of information and stakeholders in the biochar landscape and ecosystem in India. And on that note, we have a very good session planned today. Joining us to represent MatiMitra is its founder, Akash. Akash has been driving force behind the organization and years of experience prior to this and bringing all that to the table. Under his leadership, MatiMitra is scaling operations and building key partnerships, and he'll share a lot of about his journey today. We also have Abhilasha Tripathi, very well known name in the biochar ecosystem from India, and she'll be presenting with us as well today. Abhilasha brings her perspective on this topic. Together, Akash and Abhilasha bring a powerful combination of on-ground implementation experience and the research scientific insights, which is exactly the kind of dialogue this series is meant to spark. So without further delay, let's dive in. Please join me in welcoming Akash and Abhilasha to this session. Akash, the stage is yours. And just, sorry, I missed a small housekeeping note. Viewers that are watching, you can post your questions on the comment sections on Zoom, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitter, wherever it is you're watching this from. And once Akash and Abhilasha's presentation is done, we will take those questions one by one. Thank you all for joining. Akash, thanks for joining. Abhilasha, thanks for joining. Leave the stage to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Tejas, for the lovely introduction and also for having us, on your platform. And I'm extremely happy to, not only share my journey, for the last almost 4 years on, what we've been building and what eventually turned out to be MatiMitra Carbon Solutions. And I think this session, I would love to simply focus on what exactly is a biochar-based, carbon project. Because biochar production, although a lot of our viewers might be, already very well familiar with, but what goes behind a biochar-based carbon project is something that, currently, which I personally noticed that, institutions are working, in biochar-based carbon projects, but their capacity on what exactly, they are doing is still a little bit lacking. So, happy to be here, share our, whatever we've learned, over the last 2+ years. And we also have Dr. Abhilasha Tripathi, who'll be taking over certain elements related to the science and technology aspects related to biochar-based carbon projects. And Abhilasha, if you could also quickly introduce yourself. Your mic is muted.
Yeah. Hi Tejas, hi Anand, and hi Akash. Thanks for giving this opportunity to be here and present my perspective on what goes in as the science part of biochar-based carbon removal projects. And my experience has been like like I finished my PhD from IIT Kanpur back in year 2023. And my work was mostly related to biochar based slow release fertilizers. And like as part of my thesis, I also happened to get some recognition from Fertilizer Association of India and Mosaic Foundation, and Science Innovator Award from SARM Bhubaneswar. So like this has been my academic journey, and as part of my professional journey, I have been working for over 2.5 years now in biochar based carbon removal projects, a mixture of certain industrial projects and certain artisanal projects. So like would be happy to share that how both science and on ground operations critically balances the whole ecosystem rather than taking care of just one part of it. So would be happy to share my experience on the platform. So thank you very much.
Right. Thank you, Abhilasha. So I'll also very quickly introduce myself as well. So, by education, I'm originally an electronics engineer from Mumbai University here itself. And post which, I never really worked in engineering or any technical role as such. I always worked, in early stage startups, where my first job was actually an internship at Uber, and which had just launched. I think it was about a year. It had launched in Mumbai, and I had immediately joined because from the beginning itself, I wanted to learn how how these companies or how startups really build things from scratch. So my first, after my graduation, my first 6 years of my career was in early stage startups, primarily within operations itself. So, and post which I did my master's in industrial engineering from Sweden. And in Sweden was, the first time where I kind of first got exposed to carbon markets in general. And something was super intriguing to me that, uh, farmers do climate action, they reduce open burning, or, they plant trees and they can actually earn money. Amazing concept, right? But it's something that's but the other half of it, which is how do you actually prove it? That's where the capacity was lacking, and that's where I started asking these questions. And post which I shifted back to India, and tried to start a carbon project in Maharashtra first. Failed miserably because people in Maharashtra, they immediately realized that I'm not from Maharashtra. I'm an outsider coming and telling them about some new concept that they have no idea about. So eventually I decided this is not the best way to do it. So my parents are from Orissa, so immediately what I did was I shifted to my grandparents' place, and I lived there for about 2 years. And MatiMitra is basically the product of those 2 years, that I spent on ground, and yeah. So what I'll do is I'll quickly now start with the presentation.
Perfect. It's
Can
very
uh,
fresh.
can everyone see my screen?
Yes, it's like
So good. Right. So, a ton of, crop residue can, either end up in smoke, or it can end up as biochar in soil, where it is locking carbon away for centuries, and it also pays the farmer. This is a very general concept that almost everyone here is probably already aware of. And turning that simple act of biochar production, on a farmer's field into a provable, fair, and inclusive climate action solution. So this aspect really takes two things at one time, which is the rigorous carbon science on one end and the deep village level operations at the other end. And when most people typically hear carbon credits, they picture something very abstract, which is spreadsheets, certificates, money moving, in a market in US or Europe. And so basically today I kind of want to show you the exact opposite. Like the story actually starts on a farmer's field with the same crop residue that would have been burnt or would have been decomposed, land dumped. So let's start with something that every single farmer already knows: what happens to residue after harvest. So the same ton of residue, two possible solutions. After harvest, we're left with residue, stubble, husks, cotton stalks, or corn cobs. And usually in most farms, basically two endings. One, it's straight away burnt or left to rot. And in both of these cases, the carbon eventually is entering into the atmosphere, almost either immediately in the case of burning, or in a matter of couple of seasons when it is left in the soil to rot. Plus in case if it's burnt, then the smoke, the soil, the health costs, the fines, all of this. But there is also a third, ending, that is possible here, which is, pyrolysis, if it is heated in low oxygen environments, and instead of releasing the carbon, the residue becomes biochar, which is a stable black porous carbon skeleton. And that carbon, once applied to soil, agricultural soil, now stays locked for centuries. That's the entire magic in basically in one sentence. That carbon that was about to go up in smoke, it is now parked in a farmer's soil. But here is the catch, that this magic trick, or whatever we want to call it, is not really a carbon project. A simple pile of biochar produced by a farmer on his or her land is not really a carbon credit. So this is the single biggest misunderstanding about biochar, that people think that the kiln is the biochar project, or multiple kilns, tens of kilns at multiple farms, and here is the biochar project. But that's not it. The Contiki kilns, the biochar production, this probably accounts for 10% of a biochar project. The real project is actually an entire system. It's a chain where every single link has to hold. For example, the feedstock that would have been burnt, from which fields it's coming from, all that has to be monitored. Number two, the actual process of pyrolysis and which type of kilns, whether these are monitored kilns, it can be industrial also, Contiki or industrial units. Then is the actual physical product, after the process of pyrolysis, which is biochar, which is now a stable form of carbon. And then comes the destination, which is the farmer's soil, where the carbon is stored, and it's also making the soil health better. And all of these four steps that we have just discussed, all of this wrapped together becomes the project. The proof, the documentation, the measurement, the verification. If you take any single link away here, there is no carbon credit, there is no project. A beautiful biochar being produced at individual farmers, piece of land, that still doesn't make a carbon credit, because they are, with little or no proof, there is no credit here. That's as simple as that. So what exactly, is that credit at the end, And let's be precise, because this word gets thrown around a lot. I'm sure a lot of people have already heard, what, a carbon credit. Oh, okay, you're earning from carbon credits. And it's very loosely, used. So one credit is a promise. In simple words, I'm trying to, explain. One credit is a promise that and it's a very specific promise, that 1 ton of CO2 equivalent that is no longer in the atmosphere. It's not reduced, it's not avoided, somewhere else. It's removed. Okay. And basically genuinely carbon that is genuinely taken out, which is basically biochar. And It's net, not gross. By net, what is this net now? Now, in every biochar-based projects, or let's say, for example, if you're an FPO or multiple farms working together, your biomass is being transported to a site. That transportation is also causing transport emissions. Then if you're using open kiln quantities, there is again methane emissions that is happening. So all of this, these numbers have to be removed. All of this accounting has to be done. This number has to be removed and all of this has to be measured. Then is the permanence proven in a lab, the H by C ratios, what these, 0.7 or below, or in some registries 0.4 or below, which gives you 100 plus years of, permanence of that carbon. Then all of this, activity, which is, data monitoring and everything, is independently verified before the credits are issued. And all of this is also linked to a registry as well, because there are registries involved which define the frameworks, which define the methodologies um, for how a credit has to be issued. So a buyer here isn't really buying a feeling or a story that a farmer, has decided not to burn their residue, or they're not. So they're basically buying a ton that can be traced back to a specific kiln that biochar was produced on a specific day in a specific village in a specific time. Every single thing has to be proved for a buyer to actually buy those credits, or in general, for us to even issue an credit. All of these activities have to be proven. So let's make that even more concrete and follow 1 ton of biomass residue step by step. So here, the FPO is onboarded, for example. Number one, FPO onboarded. We work with FPOs, but there can be other grassroots organizations also, that can work and who are producing biochar, and partnerships can be done over there also. Then is the biomass aggregation, which is biomass from multiple fields, smallholder plots being brought to a single site for biochar production. Then is the actual biochar production in either quantity kilns, or if it's industrial systems, then in industrial machines. Then is the actual application of the biochar into agricultural soil. Then is the digital monitoring, reporting, and verification systems, where all of these project activities is very transparently recorded in a digital monitoring verification platform, and shown to the registry, the third party verification bodies, and to the buyers as well. And then comes the issuance of the credits, and then comes the selling of the credits, and revenue generation. Now notice here that steps 1, 2, and 4, they actually happen in the villages with real people here. And steps 3 and 5, this is where the technology part lives. And then the steps 6 and 7 are the markets. And 1 ton of CO2 touches all of these 3 worlds before it becomes income or revenue for the farmer. And running this chain itself, for us, what we describe it as completely 2 different businesses at once. And what I'll do is I'll have Dr. Abhilasha Tripathi take over the next part for us as well.
Yeah. Thanks, Akash. So, in the starting, as I mentioned, that there are 2 parts to the biochar based carbon removal projects, and the one part, now we are actually gradually getting into the heart of this conversation, and the one part that is I would like you to understand that is the take home message for today is although it's not the time to give the take home message, but I would like to make sure that you understand that the science part and the soil, the field implementation part, these 2 form the crucial part of this project. So, you have to be like, Akash, can we have next? yeah, so when we say that it's about science and technology, we have to have the idea that can we prove the science and technology that we are talking about? And when we say the feed operations, it's like, can you actually do it? And what is generally happening around that most of the projects are strong in either one of the aspect, and when the other aspect fails, the whole project comes down. So the idea is that keep a balance between these two aspects. Nothing can be compromised. So that is the key finding from this particular slide, I would say. So next, we'll talk about the carbon accounting part. So as Akash mentioned earlier as well, so the carbon credit is something that is 1 ton of CO2 equivalent that is not that is removed from the atmosphere. So how we actually quantify that? Carbon accounting is the strategy that we follow, and it is simple like any other accounting that we do, like financial accounting, things like that, that what comes in and what goes out, and there's a difference between the two. That's what stays, and that's how we quantify these removals also. So there is like the biochar that we have produced, we are storing carbon through that in soil, but at the same time, to carry out these activities, we are also having certain emissions. So those emissions need to be deducted from what we are storing. That's how we will get to know what our carbon removals are. So the carbon that is stored is dependent on factors like what is the biochar carbon content, um, that we generally do with the lab testing, and H/C ratio and soil temperature. These are also quantified from the either from the lab test or soil sampling, soil test, on-site testing, these things. So basically, first we want to know what is the permanence of biochar that we are using in our project. So H/C ratio and soil temperature, these two are the things that help us determine the permanence. And then with the help of biochar carbon content, we can actually find out how much carbon is being stored in the soil. And specifically with the soil temperature, I would like to point out here that the higher the soil temperature, lower is the permanence. So the soil temperature becomes very significant when we talk about the permanence. Since at higher temperature, the microbial activity is relatively high. So there are chances that the labile fraction that can be easily decomposed will be decomposing at a faster rate compared to the one that is, hard to decompose. And similarly, the H/C ratio is also a permanence indicator, where the lower the value of H/C ratio, we have higher permanence, which means we have more aromatic carbon present. And when we talk about the emissions are related to transportation, be it the transportation of feedstock from farmer's field to the production site, and transportation of biochar from production site to the farmer's field back again, and embodied emissions in the form of emission that are used, that are done during the manufacturing of the kiln, or doing some construction at the production site. And methane emissions are quite important because with open kiln system, there are methane emissions, and these emissions need to be deducted to quantify the carbon removals. So next slide we can have. So like we have broadly talked about how we give number to the carbon credit that we are generating, but it's much more, it goes much more deeper when we actually get into the flow of biochar production. Each and every step has to be scientifically justified to have credible removals, and of course, we are doing the digital MRV. So that is used to capture all those elements and are, evidence of when we claim that we are doing credible high quality removals. So now I'll get into the steps that talk about how the science gets into the flow of biochar production, and each and every step counts over here. So the first one is the feedstock, its moisture content. So the idea over here is that we want to maximize the heat energy that we are giving for biochar production to carbonize the biochar. If we have high moisture content, we see the vapor formation, which is not desirable, and it also reduces the carbonization efficiency of the biochar and can reduce the biochar quality. So we want to ensure that when biochar production is done, it is done with moisture content which is less than 20%, and even less than like 10% makes it even better. The reason is same, that you have more play for carbonization. And then particle size also becomes really important over here. So I'll give you a quick example of how we do cooking at our home when we have to bake potatoes. It is always suggested that make a uniform size of potatoes, cut it to uniform size so that we have uniform cooking. Otherwise, the smaller pieces will be overcooked, and the larger pieces will be undercooked. So, what we'll have on plate, we'll have some pieces of raw potatoes and some of overcooked potatoes. We don't want that. Similar is the situation over here, that we want the particle size to be relatively uniform. And let's say, giving you an example of cotton stalk, we don't want leaves in the process because the leaves are thin, they'll get cooked quickly. So we don't want that. So that's why uniform particle size. Then next we have during the pyrolysis, the temperature monitoring is something which becomes very crucial. The continuous logging of temperature gives the idea of the unique fingerprint that each feedstock has. So let's say you are having certain pattern for cotton feedstock, and just to fulfill the requirement of making biochar, you are dumping any other feedstock which is not approved. The temperature pattern will change suddenly, and that's how the project developer will be flagged that there is some undulation in the feedstock going over here. So that's how we can take care of the temperature monitoring. And to maintain the flame curtain is also a skill. So for that reason, we as project developers, we focus a lot on training our biochar producers, so that the idea is that they don't over fill the kiln, or apply large amount of feedstock during the biochar production, else it will smother the flame. And if we go for very thin layering, it will have ash generation issues. We want to avoid both of them. So yeah, next is the quenching process. The quenching becomes very crucial because here is the step where we again want to avoid the ash formation. So we want to quench the biochar quickly and in timely manner so that we can avoid methane formation as well as ash formation. So yeah, that's the thing. And then next step is the destination, that is your soil application. So here we want to be really mindful about what kind of soil we are targeting for soil application. So giving you an example, that biochar is already alkaline in nature, and if we apply it to an alkaline soil, it will not be beneficial for the plants at all, because it will reduce the bioavailability of several nutrients. We want to avoid that. So we have to choose that what kind of biochar treatment we have to do for any soil application. And there is another big alert, I would say, that we should avoid using raw biochar into the soil. We should charge it with nutrients and then only use it for application. And again, we have to be mindful about the soil type, soil characteristics for applying the biochar to the soil, be in terms of dose or what kind of treatment you want to give to it. Then next we have the project traceability. So whatever activities we are doing, they have to be properly traced. So for that, we are using digital MRV tool that makes the project monitoring very easy remotely. We are able to monitor how the project activities are being performed. And the very important element of it is the geotagged images with date and time stamps. And that also helps us maintaining transparency at each and every step of the process. Then next we have is the lab testing of biochar, which is crucial for the biochar quality assessment, and it gives a very important input for our carbon accounting. So the sample collection that is done is a very scientific process. We have to collect the sample in such a manner that it is homogenized and it is representative of whatever operations we are doing. So we just cannot have sample collection from one kiln run. So for that, we do the retention sample on site, and from that we pull out the representative sample, which is homogenized and sent to the laboratory for testing, where we are able to get the data about the carbon content, bulk density, contaminants like heavy metals or PHs. We have to follow the guidelines by EBC and WBC to ensure that whatever biochar we are adding to the soil is actually beneficial, rather than we want to avoid any heavy metal loads back to the soil. So that's why these kind of testing comes really handy and very critical for the project developers. And then the pH content, as I mentioned, that we have to see that what kind of soil we are targeting, acidic soil or alkaline soil, and what is the pH of our biochar. So yeah, it becomes really important. Then next we have So like as we are talking about the science part, there are several questions that like whether we can prove these parameters or not. And for that, first comes is the permanence. So permanence is all about for how long you are able to store the carbon into the soil that you are using, that you are storing with the help of biochar. And for that, as I mentioned about the carbon accounting part, where we do the permanence analysis of the biochar based on the H/C ratio and the soil temperature. That helps us understand what is the permanence, and based on that, we can do the amount of carbon we are storing in the soil. Then comes the additionality part. This is like I would say it covers the social aspect more compared to the science part, because additionality covers several elements. Let's say if this project would have not happened, what is the situation around? And like if the biochar production is anyways happening, then there is no need of carbon financing. So we have to justify over here that why carbon financing makes sense for this particular project, because we already know that in the current situation, there is no sustainable means to manage these agricultural residues. And that's where that becomes a very strong point for the additionality of for most of the projects, that why carbon financing is really essential over here. Then comes the monitoring plan. This has the science part to it, because we have to be mindful about how we are watching the project over the time and how we are scientifically capturing the data. So here we are doing the calibration of whatever equipments we are using, and the lab testing that we do, the internal audits and the third party audits, all of these forms the monitoring part of the project, and they have to be done at a regular cadence, so that we can ensure that monitoring is being taken care of properly. And definitely we have to account all of this data in it has to be recorded. Then quality control. So quality control, here, as I said, I explained the flow that we saw previously, that from feedstock preparation to the stage of soil application, we have to maintain the quality of the process of biochar making, so that we can say that each batch that is produced is of uniform quality. So that's how we can say that how our every batch is a consistent one. Then next is the co-benefit sharing. So again, this also covers the social part of the project, but it becomes really important because when we say that we are trying to make some impact on the community, but again, we have to quantify that, how we are creating that impact. Let's say we are saying that we are reducing emissions. So we have to assign number to that, that how we are able to control the emissions, what measures we are taking and how we are quantifying that. That becomes really important. Then next comes the uncertainty and assumptions. So, like whenever we go for any project implementation on ground, and every project becomes very different and very locally, in a very local perspective, we have to view each and every project. So each project comes with its own uncertainty and certain assumptions also we have to carry out to say that we are performing these calculations, and here we have these assumptions. But the overall idea is to talk about this is that how well we are able to capture those uncertainty and assumptions, and when buyers, let's say, they are talking about the project, how well we can say that these are the uncertainties and we are quantifying this, and how confident we are about that. So this is all about how we are capturing these elements into number and quantifying it. So that's how the first half of can you prove it is captured here. Now I'll request Akash to take over the second half part of this, which is about the operations on ground. Yeah.
Thank you, Abhilasha.
Thanks,
Now,
Akash.
the second half, which is, operations at scale. And this is basically the half, again, that decides whether a project survives actual contact with reality, actual contact with a village. So, for example, residue is bulky and it's scattered across hundreds of small plots, and it's only available in a narrow window after harvest. So this is a real challenge. Then again comes aggregation. It's a logistics problem because every ton of residue that you move, you have to get it done in that narrow time window, and everything costs money as well, transporting that biomass. Uh, Third, there is no model Indian village. Every single cluster, every single village, they have their own different crops, their own, some have two crops, three crops, some have all different institutions, different politics. And none of this can be designed, from a spreadsheet sitting in a city. And which is why we actually spent 2 years first living with FPOs in Odisha before anything looked like a business. So all of this was learnings, from our end. How does residue actually move? When farmers prepare their land, when does compost actually arrive? And when do we actually need it if we are to set up the biochar project? And So for us, the problems weren't really scientific as well, because I mean they were also, I mean science also has their own challenges, but operational challenges were far higher here as well. So uh, coordinate, yeah, right. So I'll just take to the next slide now. So there are about 19, I think, projects registered under Carbon Standards International, and many more projects coming under the artisanal methodologies. And I think a few more and a few more different industrial projects also registered across Puro, isometric, and a few other registries as well. Now, the same, ton of CO2 or the same carbon credit, or I mean, just two different projects, but the range of the value of these projects is very different. Some sell for $50, whereas some sell for 100, and industrial projects sell for sometimes 150, 180. So why is there this huge difference? So, sorry. So a standard credit, leans on estimates and gross accounting, with co-benefits that are claimed but unverified. Whereas when you look at a premium credit or a premium carbon credit in general, so this is built on real sensor data, which is attached either to those industrial systems or to attach to those quantities, with conservative baseline studies, with co-benefits that are actually measured, and a full chain of custody from the farm to a credit. So here the buyer is not just paying for carbon, here the buyer is actually paying for certainty. The more proof that you are able to provide in your project, the more proof that you can show to your buyers, the more traceability you bring to your project, the better your credits automatically become. So the buyer is technically paying for that certainty, CO2 equivalent ton that the buyer can actually trace, defend, and trust. So I'm sure a lot of you have already encountered some news articles, probably, some bad headlines, and which is why certainty here is the whole game, not just developing a carbon project. So, and that's the kind of project even, we as MatiMitra eventually set out, to make. And earning that certainty on both halves. One is the science and technology, and the other one is village, village level operations is, which is why we decided deliberately to build, the project with the partners that we chose eventually. So we build with farmer producer organizations, and very deliberately here. They are not just our suppliers in the project. They don't just supply us, the biomass. They are actual partners with a financial stake in this project. So the farmer producer organization, which is already it's a farmer collective, they already have the infrastructure within the FPO. They have the relationships with, hundreds and, sometimes even thousands of farmers. They have that reach, they have that trust in those villages. And for a carbon project to survive eventually, this is, step zero, basically, that trust. So, and like I was saying earlier, we learned it the hard way in Maharashtra, when we tried to build it, and just didn't work out for us. And eventually, what is happening when we work with FPOs, they are the ones who are aggregating the biomass for us. They are the ones who produce the biochar in Kontiki kilns for us. They are the ones who, operate dMRV as well for us, which is the digital monitoring tools. We have dedicated dMRV operators whose only role is to monitor every single project activity from before the even biomass is aggregated, from that stage to the actual sequestration of biochar in agricultural soil. They are our partners in the field trial of biochar based applications on agricultural soil. And again, most importantly, they are our revenue sharing partners. So they are not just, we are not just paying a small processing fee to the partners, to the FPOs for producing biochar, let's say 5 rupees, 6 rupees per kg of biochar production. Whereas, in fact, they are having a fixed revenue share, which actually increases year on year as the project scales and as we have more volumes of, credits that we issue. So we and more importantly, what we also pay for is adoption for the farmers, because this is something that we also have to realize that biochar in a lot of places, biochar based fertilizers or yeah, bio inputs, let's call it, this is a very, very new concept. So we are, in fact, very few agri input companies can actually even claim this, that paying a farmer to adopt this new practice and to conduct these types of field trials. So we pay the farmer for adoption now, who is a clear stakeholder, in this project. They are not just a vendor or a supplier in this project. And if the farmer doesn't win here, the project also doesn't win. So everything, everything else is basically downstream of that. And let me just show you what all of this looks like, all of the things that we talked about earlier, what it looks like, in a place put together. So this is our own biochar project, which is the Utkal Bharat Biochar Project. And we've registered it under the Rainbow Registry, which is the most rigorous methodology in the open-kin biochar methodologies, with the highest scientific requirements and the highest on-ground operational requirements as well currently in the market. For dMRV, what we've developed is an end-to-end cradle-to-grave, approach, wherein we are monitoring from which fields the biomass is coming from to which fields the biochar is going into. All of that is recorded within our digital monitoring, recording, and verification systems. The kilns also that we have developed is temperature integrated kilns, for again reasons that were mentioned, earlier, and for also, monitoring the process data, sharing the process data with the buyers, because this is something that currently lacks within, artisanal projects. Is buyers don't really get a lot of confidence whether biochar was actually produced or not. For just to give you a very small example, what if, I start a kiln run, I start a fire. After 20 minutes itself, start quenching, I put water, I stop the, fire, and I now start claiming the credits. So these are some obvious issues that were even evident to us, that we also realized that, our partners could also do this. So what temperature sensor integration does is it tells us exactly for how long the kiln run was also, live for. Then we are creating a proprietary data set of soil type, crop type, and biochar-based data set, biochar-based bio inputs, that whatever we put in agricultural soil, all of that we are creating a data set to be open sourced for public, so that nobody has to reinvent this cycle, because unfortunately, through carbon projects itself, lakhs of tons of biochar was actually sequestered in soil, but what its impact was on the soil, on the yield, none of that is actually available for the public yet. Then is extremely rigorous carbon accounting, which Abhilasha also talked about. Then is benefit sharing. Again, the benefit sharing is one of the highest and most transparent benefit sharing that we have developed, is because I mean, ultimately, what we want is long-term partnerships, in this project, and we want the partners that come in to our biochar project, as to stay with us for a much longer period of time, instead of just becoming a small supplier of biochar. And so we built this project in Odisha on purpose. Specifically, in one place, we dived very deeply, before until we know that the project or the model actually works. Because the fastest way to fail in rural India is to scale something that you haven't really proved yet. So from Odisha is, where we scale from, but we will scale very responsibly. We will always be farmer first, proof first, one honest, CO2 equivalent or one honest carbon credit at a time. And biochar is what we are developing today, and we'll be going beyond biochar as well over the next, few years using the same institutions, which is the farmer producer organizations. And again, the same rule applies. If it isn't provable and if it isn't fair to the farmer, it isn't, worth doing. And that'll be it from my side. And would love to have some questions.
It's amazing. Thanks, Akash. Thanks, Abhilasha. That was really a very clear-headed, very organized presentation from both of you. Really happy for you have taken us through what happens, the science, the accounting, and the thought process, philosophy behind how it started and how it's evolving. Really happy to hear that. I mean, there were a lot of things that really made sense and were never spoken about. Just to touch revenue share changing over years with the local partners,
Right.
thinking about them first and having them onboarded for a much longer term. That's really nice. Yeah, I'm sure a lot of our audience have a bunch of questions, so I'll just leave some housekeeping notes. For all those joining us, whichever platform you are joining from, you could leave your comment, question on the comment section. And if you're joining from Zoom, you could raise your hand and we would let you unmute your audio and ask your question directly to Akash and Abhilasha. So yeah, Anant, do you have any questions to kick off or?
Oh, hi, hi. That was really good, Akash and Abhilasha. Thank you very much. The premium credit that you were talking about, you listed out, I think, what was the last one? Can you explain that a little more? Can you go back to that point? There was the last one about, I think it was co-benefit sharing. Was it? How do you, measure that? Is that quantifiable other
Excellent.
than the biochar being given to the farmer, other than the farmer applying that?
Correct.
Is there any other co-benefits to the community that you're looking at?
Absolutely. Perfect. Excellent point, this one. Like, this is a good question, actually. So a lot of projects, I mean, artisanal biochar projects, the reason why most of these credits they even sell is because of the co-benefits associated, which is like, dual job creation. Then, especially in the post-harvest period where jobs are actually scarce in villages, right? But how do you actually measure it? And how do you actually present it to buyers, right? That is the biggest, because, the points that we talked about earlier is, it's all about the proof, how well you can document and prove everything. Just to give you a small example, what happens in rural India, I think, Anand, we were talking about this, in our earlier conversation as well. Like women, they get in agriculture, at least is what happens in Odisha, they do get paid lesser, when we hire women for conducting any type of agricultural, activities, they are paid lesser compared to the men. This is a standard practice, what I've noticed, at least in Odisha, and I've seen it across in Maharashtra and in a lot of other places also. This is a reality, this does happen. So one of the co-benefits that we are targeting is equal pay or gender equality, equal pay for women. How do you quantify that? We, as project partners, when we work with FPOs, we pay them, of course, for the overall, let's say, labor payments, but they have to share with us the further down payments that they have done to their, all the workers that they have hired. Currently, if you look into the markets, all the contracts are just done with one single entity or one single farmer. They are not. Then the farmer further, of course, because that farmer probably has 1 or 2 acres of land, and but he's still aggregating biomass from hundreds and hundreds of farmers, and none of this data is being collected. That how many jobs that you created, And did you pay them equally and fair? And were the women involved in these projects were paid equal to the men? So just an example of, the co-benefit that we are targeting is equal pay to men and women. And, how do you measure it is by, we do a tripartite agreement with the FPO and with the laborers, where we are there as a kind of like an auditor, where we ensure that, those payments are done only digitally, and those payment records have to be shared with us, because this is something that we will share with the verification bodies as well later. So this way, this is like one of the co-benefits that you can, that's, because you
Got
were
it.
talking about what a premium credit is, and
Got it.
this is one of those ways you can monitor these activities. Like, for example, another, a few other co-benefits is like how much biomass have you diverted from open burning and land dumping? So although this quantity is not really, it's very difficult to actually measure it, by the way, because biomass, when you bring to the site, it's uh, you know, it's fresh. It has a lot of moisture. That weight and your when you dry it in the field and then you produce biochar, that is a very two different weights you will get. Very, very different. Of course, it needs about the yield is about 25%, but you have to actually measure it. Are you actually measuring it? Because like I was saying earlier, it's everything is about how much you can prove. The more data you give, the more premium your credit automatically becomes.
Right. Okay, I just want to make a housekeeping announcement before I ask my next question. Anybody in the audience in Zoom, please do unmute yourself, ask the question. Dr. A.N. Vargat, you've asked a question in the chat. If you want to unmute and ask it, that'll be great. You can unmute yourself and ask. Do you want to do that? Or should I read the question? Dr. Vargat? All right, I'll read your question.
Yes, good evening,
go
sir.
ahead. Go ahead, please go ahead.
Yes, good evening. The session was very nice and informative. I just want to ask the one important question, that if that biochar can be used as a media for the different type of EPF or trichoderma species to be grown on it, can we, means it is possible, or means I just want to know more about that media, because it will be very vulnerable if we use the biochar as a media for the pathogen grown colonies for the agriculture purpose. Thank you.
So maybe Dr. Abhilasha here can, take this one up and
Yeah, I'm not much into the microbial uh, population of biochar, but what I'm able to understand that we have to undergo some lab test and lab trials to actually get to this part, but I think it is possible. So yeah, can be done, but I'm not having specialization in the microbial part, so yeah, sorry for that.
I think we'll write this down as a question for us
Yeah.
to even research some, because this is quite specific.
Yeah,
It's
definitely.
the first time I'm hearing this question as well. This was trichogramma, right? Not trichoderma. So trichogramma
Yes,
is
yes,
like
yes.
an EPN. That's what he said. Okay, we'll have to
Okay.
look it up. This is very specific. Thank you, Dr. Vargat, for raising it.
Yeah.
Always curious to learn more. We're all about curiosity and learning new things. So thank you
Yeah,
very much.
just one point I can add over here, that in general, I have observed that the survivability of microbial population increases with biochar. So based on that point and doing some lab test, actually, that would be able to give some supporting data. So yeah.
Yes, ma'am, actually I have done with the biochar, and
Okay.
due to the much porosity, I have found that the particular biochar quantity is about 3:1,
Mhm.
3 part of biochar and 1 part of the particular sulfur and glucose, that is dextrose. If we use in that particular quantity and
Mhm.
sterilize the particular media, then we will get the biochar as a media. But lots of consequences are there, and most of the thing I have faced in the lab during my research, it was the contamination is higher found in, because biochar consists like different kinds of microbes presently living in that biochar only. So that's why when I tried to make or maintain the particular media, the contamination was there.
Maybe you could
Okay.
try with a freshly made raw biochar,
Yeah.
doctor.
Yes,
That
yes,
would,
yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes,
or you
yes.
could also oven dry your samples for at a given temperature for a few hours, which would possibly eliminate any organisms that are living in it, so that you have a sterile sample of biochar to begin with, which could possibly reduce the contamination. This is coming from a non-biology grad, but
Yeah,
Thank
uh,
you.
actually it makes
Thank you
sense.
for your insights, sir.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, but just curious, what was the original raw biomass the biochar was made from, Dr. Varga? Did you use cotton biomass made
Yes, yes,
biochar?
cotton biochar, because I am from Maharashtra, Amravati. So
Yeah.
majorly it's a grown area for the cotton. So I use the cotton as a biochar.
And did you use it like right off the bat, or did you let it age for some time? I mean, you made the biochar, let it sit for a month, and then you used it, or did you use it right after making it?
I just, sir, earlier mentioned that no, that freshly biochar is used, it will be good.
Yeah,
I did, it's getting for fermentation process or getting aged. Then after I just used.
right, got it. So was
So
it aged
that's
for
why I
like
got
30 days?
contamination.
Acha,
Yes.
30 days or 15 days, any time frame?
After 1 month, I use the particular media for that.
Got it. And was it lying outside in the open in the field, or was it packaged?
It's lying outside.
Got it. Got it. Okay. All right. You'll want to come back and share some of your research, Dr. Varga. We'd love to have you ahead. We're all about this, trying to learn new uses for biochar and what people are doing out there. So thank you for that question. So anybody else wants to unmute and ask? People in YouTube, Facebook and LinkedIn, please do ask your questions in the comment box. आप हिंदी में भी सवाल पूछ सकते हैं. हमने ये पहला बोला नहीं, हम आगे जाके हिंदी में भी सेशन करना चाहते हैं. आपको कुछ सवाल पूछना है, प्लीज यूट्यूब, लिंक्डइन, फेसबुक में हिंदी में भी आप कमेंट बॉक्स में अपना प्रश्न पूछिए और हम लोग वो यहाँ उठा सकते हैं. Anybody sitting in Zoom, please do unmute and ask. So one more question before Tejas, you ask your question. I know you're ready to jump, but Akash, we've been doing sessions where people have been using the entrepreneur model. You know, instead of an FPO, an entrepreneur is sitting there. So I'm just curious, you know, with the accounting methods, number one, that was the number one question. The second is, what are the standards talking about where the entrepreneur is sitting, because that's a very different stakeholder who's been put in there. So can you just briefly talk about your opinion from your reading of all the standards, and what do you see the contrast when you're, you know, doing it to the FPO, and do you, you know, come easier into the premium credit because obviously you're working with the farmer themselves?
So, I don't want to claim that, we are a premium credit or, anything before we actually sell those credits at a premium price. But, let's, break down that question, that you asked, like, whether it's okay if we partner with a entrepreneur or just one farmer or, these types of. So what happens here is, when a single farmer, when I as a project developer, I'm making a contract with a single farmer, let's say, for example. So, and he or she is procuring, or aggregating biomass from hundreds of different of fields. So, whether, I mean, so one of the principal requirements here is, I want to talk about is the carbon rights, for example, because ultimately this is an environmental attribute that we are selling in the market, correct? So, and we need to take a step back here and really try to assess whether we actually have the rights to sell it first. Okay. So the reason why we partner with an FPO is because when we partner with an FPO, we do a extremely thorough documentation, process, which takes place actually for an entire month before the project even goes operational. So in that, 1 or 2 months, we document every single farm. We sign documents, explain what, their biomass is, because ultimately the credits are issued for the biomass or for the carbon in that biomass, which is then converted to biochar, right? So do I have the right to actually sell that, that carbon, to a European or US based company? So, and if I'm, so this is where, these types of documentations, it's a little bit of a tricky, gray area, I would call it. If, if you're doing a partnership just with one person who is collecting it from hundreds of fields, and that documentation is something that is missing, then of course, I mean, maybe you'd be able to sell your credits, but I mean, any serious buyer would definitely look into these aspects where, whether you actually have those rights to those farms biomass or not, because or you need to be able to show that that chain of custody, those that traceability eventually, like, for just as a simple example, like I'm coming to you and trying to sell you some apples. Is it not a fair question for you to ask me, do you actually own this apple or not? So it is a fair question, right? So when I'm going and selling some carbon, or some carbon credit in the market, then that's also a fair question that they will ask us, that do you actually have the rights to the to the carbon of that biochar, or to the carbon of that biomass as well. So that entire chain of custody has to be, traceable, has to be proved. And for that reason, we are partnering with FPOs. And which is why, because, they are the ones who have that network to do this type of documentation for us. And only then do we actually initiate operational activities on site. And yeah, I think when you do it with someone like, for example, someone, like an entrepreneur or whatever you want to call it, then these types of documentation, of course, if you are able to capture it, then it's fine. But, typically it does not happen because, it's India, wherever you can do jugaad, you will
Right,
do.
right. But
Yeah.
a basic question is, if the farmer gives the biomass, are we expecting that some part of biochar that is produced from that biomass goes back to that farmer? Or if that biochar is sold in the open market? I mean, are we saying in this system, of course, you talked about the community benefiting from the biochar produced. Are we saying 100% that has to happen, that the biochar has to go back to that farmer's field? Or
It
can it be
doesn't.
realized with the biochar being sold and the farmer getting the money for it? You know what I mean? Like, I mean, is there any
Right.
compulsion from either the ethical point
Right.
of view or the standards or the whole system saying that it has
Yeah.
to go, some part of it has to go back to the field it came from?
Right. So some registries do have certain requirements that, okay, 30% has to go back, minimum 30% has to go back to the communities who gave you the biomass. These types of, requirements are there. But in general, there's no like hard requirement. You can even say, sell the biochar altogether, make money out of that as well. But we don't, take that approach for now. We do not sell the biochar. We give 100% of it back to the communities, because ultimately, see, biochar is also a low bulk density product. It cannot be transported like thousands and thousands of kilometers, to some random, field, or another farmer who's buying in large quantities. So all that cannot be done. Otherwise, you're eating away, your margins, because already the market rate is like, between 3 rupees to 12 rupees. It's, for me, it looks like it is ridiculous, these types of pricing, because the kind of work that goes into it and the kind of, results that it can bring in, 3 rupees to 5 rupee, 3 rupees to 12 rupees per kg, it just doesn't make any sense to me. So because of that, and it has a lot of reasons. I'm not trying to, I mean, there are a lot of reasons behind it. Of course, the awareness itself is not there. Then, how do you create value out of a product which, for which awareness itself is not there? So which is why one of the reasons why we are giving it away for free back to the same FPOs is because we want to create a hyper local economy, biochar economy within those, small networks itself. So that, eventually, because carbon credits and everything is fine, it's great. You get a revenue out of it, to sustain operations and to ensure that the farmers actually are able to adopt, because biochar is not going to probably give you results, immediately, right? So I'm sure you guys are practitioners, you guys are producing biochar. if you go to a new farm, you give them biochar, you apply it, it's not going to immediately give, or maybe it does, but there's a high chance that it's not immediately going to give them certain results. Soil SOC, all of that, happens after multiple applications over a period of 2 to 3 years. And, producing biochar itself is a cost. So carbon credits, I look at it as a means to, just to build that adoption and build the demand curve of a market that currently just does not exist.
Got it. Got it. But a fundamental question is the LCA, does it stop with the biochar being produced at the Contiki, or does the LCA stop where it is applied? Because therein
Great
lies
question.
the whole thing. If I sell it somewhere, the
Correct.
LCA should account for that. Na, kahan tak ja raha hai? If you're sitting in Odisha and selling it to Delhi, then that should account for that. Does it?
This is a good question. So typically projects operate in two ways. Your credits are either issued at the stage of mixing of biochar with any type of manure, compost, or fertilizer, or it can be taken one step further, which is actual application of biochar on agricultural soil. So credits can be issued in two of these, stages. So it depends on the developer or the project developer at which stage they decide to actually issue those credits. So we don't issue credits at the stage of mixing. And because this is also, again, comes the quality of your credits.
Okay.
What happened to the biochar, if there's no traceability, then again, it's a question mark for the buyers, because that documentation, that proof, that traceability is missing. And it's a big link between the actual because biochar production is not a big challenge. Actually monitoring till the point of sequestration is a larger, bigger challenge, and it involves cost. It involves coordinating input supplies, mixing it and then applying it using, hiring workers and laborers. All of that has to be done. So, you have to take into, I mean, it depends on you. If, you want to sell it, of course, you can issue it at the stage of mixing, and then, maybe you can go ahead and sell it. But this is not where I see myself, doing, because like I was talking earlier, I think creating a hyper local market within, the local communities, building loyalty, building trust and demand parallelly, this is, I think, the most critical part of, the biochar, because ultimately, if the physical product, which is biochar, that if we are not able to make any value of, then all of this work, after 5 year, 10 years of period of time, once the crediting period stops, your project will also ultimately stop. Everyone will
Right.
stop producing biochar also.
Got it.
Which is
Got
why
it.
our main goal is to make that market, and which is why we are issuing the credits at the stage of sequestration only.
Got it. Got it. And your quality can go up from a AAA
Correct.
B or whatever that is to a
Yes,
higher
yes,
quality,
yeah.
because you're saying that, right? Got it. Anybody have questions? Please unmute yourself and ask. Tejas, over to you. I'm sure you have some questions. Bibhishan, if you get any questions, please do jump in between and ask for whoever is asking that question. Go ahead, Tejas.
Yeah. Akash, I had a couple of questions to you, Abhilasha, and one question in common. You just talked about the crediting period. So do you see, I'm sure, I don't know if there are any projects that have finished their usual 5 year crediting period and then jumped into the next 5 year phase. Do you see the carbon credits being alive for a project beyond that 5 years, or do you see any kind of change in track saying, hey, I think you have your foot, you have built your wheels, now go ahead without the crediting? Do you see something like that happening?
I don't see that happening in the next, at least the next 10 years.
Wonderful.
So all of this also involves, policy. So
Yeah.
ultimately, what are we competing against? We are not competing against, you're using biochar, based bio inputs on your soil probably, right? On your fields. So what are you competing against? It's synthetic fertilizers, right? So ultimately, the other option is so cheap, it's coming to a farmer at the fraction of its true cost, right? The true cost of it is so high, but it's, heavily subsidized right now. So ultimately, that's not, I mean, the crediting period will definitely go on at least until 10 years, because that's what it takes for a project to be truly sustainable, especially, in rural India. I feel. I don't think the additionality, there will be any big, questions being raised, at least for the next, 10 years. And in terms of policy, of course, we do see in NCR and some other regions where open burning has been, and, that fines will be imposed and, these types of steps have been taken. But biochar production is still not a mandate, right? And I don't see that happening, until a data set, we share the data set with, the government and, okay, this truly has, remarkable effects on agricultural soil. And, the government decides to, okay, let's just stop the, chemical fertilizer subsidy and maybe start subsidizing biochar-based inputs. So until these types of things take, and, these types of things will take place at least, it'll take probably a decade or probably even more, or may not even take place. So which
Makes
is why the getting period is definitely it's there for the next 10 years, at
Makes
least yeah.
Abhilasha, I had a question for you. You touched upon how the soil temperature affects the carbon and the easily decomposable elements of carbon within biochar. How important of a factor is it when it comes to the amount of carbon that's sequestered, or how much leakage or safe exclusion percentage that happens in a regular ton of carbon sequestered?
Yeah, so actually, there is this equation by Wolf, which computes the F permanence, for which we have the input for soil temperature and H by C ratio. So what happens, like when we have lower soil temperatures, higher permanence is observed for that kind of storage. But for higher temperatures, like which is generally greater than 22 degrees Celsius, and in global south, we observe these kind of temperature ranges. So there it becomes really important to compare with what is being stored in global north and what is being stored in global south. And you definitely have lower permanence compared to global north, because as I mentioned that there is a fraction in biochar always which is labile in nature. Labile, by that I mean that it is easily decomposable. So there is a study also which says that if the H by C ratio is less than 0.4, the labile fraction is around 25%. So this 25% is, decomposes within 100-year window. So that's why we include this equation to quantify that wherever you are storing biochar, what the soil temperature is, and based on that, what is your permanence factor for the storage. So that's where it becomes really important.
Very interesting, and I hope we do sessions going into the depth of these aspects someday.
Tejas, I want to ask a follow-up here, because I'm sitting in Vidarbha, Abhilasha. The temperature is 48 degrees in summer. I have no cover crops. So are we saying that I have to dig the soil, put the biochar inside, like maybe 3-4 feet, and that is a better place to be? This is a layman question. It could be a dumb question as well. But I've just, I've not planted cover crops yet. Obviously, everybody is saying, please have some cover crops, because the summer temperature this time was not that bad as last year. This time it was 45, 46. But soil temperature, I'm sure it is above 60 where I am. What do you suggest? Is it you're laying on the top of the soil, or you dig it down and put it down so there's a little more permanence?
Yeah, like digging down, if we are doing the digging down part, we'll definitely have to do the temperature measurement. Like as of now, we are for sure that the temperature of soil is greater than 22 degrees Celsius in global south. So if we are doing surface application, but digging down, we have to capture the temperature, and based on that, we can do the quantification and claim that, okay, we are putting it at this much depth, and we can claim permanence according to that. So
नहीं, मेरा 60 डिग्रीज है, तो कितना है? 60 डिग्रीज में क्या होने वाला है? let
So
me
the
put,
calculation has to be done actually.
okay, okay,
There's an entire
Yeah, proper
calculation.
equations are
Yeah, there
Right,
are like
right.
there
proper
for that,
equations.
but
right,
it's
right.
easily calculatable. So yeah,
Okay,
not an
because
issue.
you're
Yeah.
sitting at 22 degrees and I'm
Yeah.
seeing, I'm sure it is 60. It's quite hot. It's crazy
Actually,
hot.
the benchmark is of 22 degree.
Acha.
Yeah,
Right.
so temperature higher than 22 degree is 22 degrees is set as the ceiling for soil temperature. Above that, it becomes, high temperature soil, and the permanence factor becomes low in that case. So less than that, there is a table which has some constants values involved to it. So based on that, we can do the permanence calculation.
Got it. Got it.
So that pretty much puts most of India in a low permanence.
Yes, yes.
Yes.
If doing the surface application.
I think I heard some people are doing liquid biochar and all. That's for a different
Yes,
session.
yes.
Probably.
Yeah, I heard this in US and all. Some people are actually doing it, making nanoparticles and making liquid fertilizer out of it. So yeah.
Trying it deep down
Yes, yes.
pressure system. Yeah.
Okay.
Amazing. A number of possibilities that are there with biochar. And I wanted to ask both of you these questions. I'll club both into one. I had two questions. You could choose to answer both of them together. Where have the projects gone wrong so far, and how is it changing? And the other part of my question is, what are the needs of a project developer that aren't being met yet? And how do you both see this changing in the next 2 to 5 years?
What has gone wrong? This is a good question. So I did spend a lot of time like studying projects and like going on ground, because none of them work directly on ground. They all have like implementation partners. So it was very easy for me to reach out to them and then actually see their on ground operations and see, basically assess. It was not necessarily to identify what they are doing wrong, but it was just to assess in general what can go wrong in the field, which pushes, farmers or in general implementation partners to do, frauds in general, because there's money involved, right? People are getting paid for per kg biochar production. So, if there is a loophole, we are very good at finding loopholes and exploiting them as well. So, and it was being done in this side as well. So, so there have been a lot of elements, here. I don't want to dig deep into, the specific ones, but just to give you an example, like for example, the lab reports, right? Ultimately, your carbon credits, the associated, the removal factor of your per ton biochar produced, it's associated to the lab reports of your biochar as to how much of fixed carbon is in it, right? So these reports can easily be manipulated, by the way, like, because you're taking a representative sample across, like multiple producers, and then you are sending it to the labs. Right. So maybe you produce one good batch of biochar, and you keep sending that batch itself, to the labs, to show good, amount of fixed C. But all of the other batches, you are doing like 10-minute fire runs. That's probably not even biochar. You're just doing multiple runs as quickly as possible just to earn a lot of money in, every day, so that I can earn as much money as possible. So these are definitely things that can go wrong and, on site. And it's very important as a project developer to monitor these activities so that, to keep the integrity of carbon markets also, and to also ensure that biochar, um, is actually able to deliver its results on fields, right? Because if, we are truly not making biochar, it's just random, something else is being put in agricultural soil, and then, and then if we try to see, okay, we'll try to ask the farmers, okay, what are the, benefits of biochar? He'll probably say nothing. It's doing nothing to my field. So these are things, as a project developer, it's very critical for us to monitor. And which is why we've, built these temperature sensor kilns also, We're building, some other implementation, like monitoring plans also within our project, just to keep transparency and visibility across the entire chain from farm to application, and then further to the buyers as well. And I think your next question was,
I mean, what are the needs of the project developers that you think aren't being met, and how do you change the landscape, see the changing landscape in the next 2 to 5 years?
correct. I think needs of the project developers. One of the biggest ones would be, I mean, as a carbon project developer, I mean, the capacity to objectively assess, how do you actually objectively assess a carbon project, right? That capacity is still missing. And when that capacity is, lacking, then, or is limited, then of course, finance also, because ultimately you need finance to, fund these projects and, these types of activities, including farmer training. So how do you objectively look at a project and assess, okay, this is a good carbon project, and this is where let's say, a CSR a partner can come in, and this is where, let's say, another NGO can come in, who can connect us with a good FPO. So since that capacity itself is lacking, so which is where, which is why I love to, I wanted to come here and do this session. How do you objectively assess the project? And even within the NGO space, a lot of people are working in carbon projects. They're signing a lot of, documents, but do they really understand what they're signing? So these are questions that should be brought up. And what do I actually need? Definitely access to a lot of high performing FPOs, and who want to be partners with us for the long run. For it's not a quick money scheme or anything of that sort, which is unfortunately what has become right now. It's simply not. It's a very long term project. When we start with an FPO, we'll probably start with just one site, and nothing else. It has to be, we are not focused on doing like 50,000, 1 lakh tons of biochar. That's not the kind of, not focusing on volumes, but we want like real quality in terms of credit and in terms of the actual biochar as well. So, of course, these two parts, which is, access to these good NGOs, FPOs, and overall ecosystem, which is what is needed. Like I can't just be a one-man army or something. I need an entire ecosystem working, parallelly. Or maybe Abhilasha can also add, certain elements here.
Yeah, so from my side, what I see the challenges with the projects in general, like science part, maybe I saw some sorted part of it, but when it comes to on-ground operation, the feedstock handling is something very, very challenging. The feedstock is bulky, and a lot of volumes is there, and you have to handle it such that it should be economic also, because handling such large volumes, you definitely need tractors and those stuffs. So how that can be done economically is something very challenging. And second part that I see is that you have to be mindful about the kind of feedstock that you are choosing for your removal project, that because at the end, economy makes the economy of scale will make the full circle, because there are certain feedstocks which will not yield enough carbon removals. So there is something where things get, that is the pain point of the project. So not many people talk about this, but every feedstock is not suitable for carbon removal projects. We can make biochar out of it, use it for soil application. That will give good effects for our soils, but it's very likely that it might not be very suitable in terms of carbon projects, because it is not having that high carbon content, to be honest. So that's the thing.
And one more, small point that I would like to add here is, the overall why capacity here is so critical because, right now everyone, I mean, I'm sure you're aware, Anant and Tejas, we're all working, all the project developers are working with European registries, Carbon Standards International, Isometric, Rainbow, all of them. So they don't really understand the Indian context of agriculture, right?
Right.
They don't have maybe an operator who truly understands what actually, is actually doable, in rural India. Some requirements are very random. Having a small lab setup literally was one of them in the fields, and I was just like, is this even sensible? And so similarly, which is why it is very critical, here for India to come up, with its own methodology framework, having the Indian context, here, what is actually doable on ground. Like, for example, I'll give you one more example is, wearing the very heavy, thick,
Yeah. Yeah.
what's those, PP, personal protection
PP
kits
kit.
with masks
Right.
and everything.
Right.
Do you think at 40, 45 degrees temperature in Nagpur, those workers are going to wear that and stand in front of it already 400, 500 degrees fire?
Right.
Do you think
Right.
that's in any way doable? But
Right.
you have to do it, to take those pictures and to give those proofs. So these, which is why that capacity has to be, come into play, so that, these frameworks can be developed specifically for the Indian context. There's a big role for, social and civic organizations here to come into picture and, share their voice of what can actually be done, in rural India, when it comes to developing a carbon project.
So Akash, I know you picked Rainbow and you picked Blue Layer. You had a set of criteria, that you were evaluating when you were looking at these standards and dMRV. Can you share how extensive the effort was? I mean, we don't need to know any specifics that made you pick those two, but at least some of the criteria where you put a lot of weight. Now that you've said you were, some Indian specific contextual settings or something else that stood out was very high priority for you. Can you share, at least what were the couple of things which are really high priority for you when you were picking this, the registry and when you were picking the dMRV? What were the couple of really high priority things?
So one of the very, because the first 2 years I actually spent was just assessing, on-ground operations, visiting a lot of other project developers, sites and everything. And I saw very clear gaps, within what the requirements of the registries are and what is actually being done in the fields. And, and I could tell also that, some of them were just ridiculous requirements and a lot of them, the on-field, operators were simply trying to, evade somehow, or, this is where the whole fraud comes in.
Yeah.
And so, which is why from day one, my first intention was to create, to have as much transparency, across the project, as much, inclusive as possible for, especially for the farmers, in the project. And which is where, I saw Rainbow as a very good partner here, because even I look at registries and, these as, they are a very important stakeholder in your project. And their role is to define the methodologies, the frameworks, and it's our feedback also that goes to further developing their methodologies. So, which is why I looked at Rainbow as, as an important partner here to further developing it as well, as to the real Indian context. And their requirements are very rigorous, and which is why one of them was the temperature sensor integrated quantities. And I also felt at that time that, is this even required? Like, I produce biochar in the field and, I click some pictures and that's a carbon project. And then when I dig deep as to why this requirement, when then I started to understand, the buyer's perspective, because these buyers are sitting in Europe and USA, they don't know what is going on field, right? So their requirement was to create a full chain of custody from farm to, like, from biomass to your biochar sequestered in soil. And, these requirements were, something that I looked at as an opportunity rather than an issue to build something truly, transparent, fair, and inclusive, and high integrity for the buyers. For the farmers, it's fair, inclusive, and for the buyers, it's very high integrity. And this, I took it up as it was a challenge, definitely, but I took it up as an opportunity to build something that's relevant. That's different. And that's also, future proof, because these requirements evolve, keep evolving. I might as well take a few steps more and, do some extra activities in my project, document them. Yeah.
Got it. So Abhilasha, just for you, there are a lot of cynics around, right? I mean, the science is inexact. It's still developing. We don't know everything what happens in the soil, so many variables. So do we have a cheat sheet somewhere that you've seen somebody has put together that we can calm down some of these cynics or just throw it back at them? Have you seen any good cheat sheets around or some reference cards or something which has been compiled? I mean, I don't want to go to ChatGPT and do it or Claude and do it because I don't know. I mean, since you're a scientist, I'm asking you this because there are people throwing stones right now saying it's too much variables. How can you say this, right? So is there satellite, confirmation or something else you have seen along with those cheat sheets that we as a community can put together, or if they're already there, we can use it because we need to give some concrete, information to all our, we're building awareness on usage and everything. And so more adoption happens with this.
So, actually, to be honest, there cannot be a single cheat sheet because every region in India, like every village in India where you are going to set up these projects, you'll see so many variables and you have to frame your project around them to actually make them function really well. But I discussed about the flow that we talk about during biochar production. So let's say feedstock moisture content, we try to maintain it less than 15%. Then when you are maintain uniform particle size of feedstock, then during pyrolysis, you have to take care that you maintain the flame curtain. You don't overburden the kiln with a lot of feedstock or underburden it. So these kind of things, and it goes to the stage of quenching and soil application also. Don't put uncharged biochar to the soil, otherwise it will show adverse effects. So these are the chain of instructions you can follow in general to make your project still not going in a bad direction. So these are the basic guidelines that can be followed. But when it comes to the implementation part of whole of the project, we have to, make it tailor-made for every single location and those things. So sorry for the cheat sheet part, but we have to be mindful about each and every step what we are taking while designing the project. So
right,
yeah,
right.
That's
so
the
I'm just
recipe.
asking because it's something to be keeping it handy, because we do have
Yeah.
those cynics and skeptics and people that ask about it all the time.
I totally agree. Like everyone want a certain guidelines, and that makes things easy. But when you get to the ground, things it doesn't fit into those
Right.
cheat
Right.
sheet at times. So
Right.
that's where you have to use your problem solving skills and try to find solution for them.
Right,
So
right. And what about satellite? I mean, are you saying are we there with satellite confirming that this is the kind of carbon sequestered? Because I mean, I don't know. I can't keep up with the advances. There's hyperspectral, multispectral, and what is the cost economics there? Can we say with 95% accuracy that this carbon has been sequestered in this field? Just very briefly.
So we are whatever images that we are taking during application or during feedstock collection, biochar production and application. So we are making taking geotagged images. So that is the level to which we go. But I've heard that there maybe the industrial scale projects can go to the level where I'll specifically talk about certain high level projects where they say that we need satellite imagery of the area where you are targeting the project, from where you are doing the feedstock collection. And the reason being that we don't want the forests to get abused for these carbon removal projects.
Oh, got it. Okay.
Yeah. So to that level, it can go.
Oh, I meant also the downstream part where the carbon, you apply the biochar and then you can see the soil organic carbon, because there are people, going around saying the soil organic carbon has increased X% because you applied biochar, like that. And I verified it with the satellite.
Correct. You're right, Anant. There are solutions where through satellite you can monitor the increase in SOC and these types of activities. But to be honest, all of these activities, they cost money ultimately.
Right,
And
right,
your
yeah.
cost to producing the carbon and selling the carbon has to justify every single activity that you are doing. And in fact, your buyers, in fact, will tell you, okay, remove this activity. We don't really want it. These types of things will happen eventually. So this has to justify, let's say if you're able to sell your credits at $100, this itself, this solution costs like, a lot of money. And
Yeah, well said. Well said.
Yeah.
Well said. Go ahead, Tejas.
Awesome. I'm going to intervene because we are already overboard on time. Akash, Abhilasha, any thoughts on today? Any feedback that you'd like to share? And we really thank you for taking the time and coming and sharing your journey with us. What we are trying to build here is a platform that researchers, farmers, project developers can come and openly share and contribute to the Indian biochar ecosystem. So that's the reasoning behind it. Thanks a lot for coming. Any parting thoughts?
I mean,
What to say?
love the session, love talking to you, love sharing about my journey, what we are building. And this is, the online format is great. I think there should also be a, like a physical format where we actually meet and get together and, share each other's work, maybe on your own farms, maybe, something that can be done. Would love to, be a part of that as well. I think,
Yeah.
So like from my side also, like I really enjoyed the session and the thoughtful questions put up by Tejas and Anant. And Anant, I'll definitely look into the putting biochar deep into the soil and the effect of soil temperature. That was a really interesting thing that you brought up. So yeah, thanks for having both of us.
Abhilasha, we would want you to come back and share a lot more about your hopefully, I think close to a decade-long journey learning about biochar and
Yes,
things
yes,
like
yeah.
that.
Yeah, thanks.
Our viewers would like to hear more and more from you. And Akash, we wish you all the very best, and hopefully you sell your credit soon and come back and share an update with us. And hope to see a lot of project developers, farmers come, as you said, to one physical location and also share that journey. Yeah, now we put out it in the universe today. We'll see it happen hopefully soon. Anand, any parting?
No, both of you come back. That's all I'll say. And, we love it.
you.
We love the passion. We're all passionate about biochar. We live it. We're all living it right now. It's great time to be in because we are basically going along the evolution of it here. It's so fun. And I am energized, every time once we meet people like you, and I want you guys both back. Really greedy about it. So thank you very much.
Thank you
Thank
for
you.
having us.
Yeah.
Good night, everybody. Good night.
Thanks a
Thanks,
lot.
Akash. Thanks,
Good night.
Abhilasha. Thanks, everyone, for joining us today and staying till the last. And also, thanks for everyone watching in other platforms. We'll come back again one other Saturday with one more panel and see you soon. Thanks a lot. Have a good day.
Thank you so much.
Good night.